Hey everybody, it's Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. You're listening to your Morning Coffee, the podcast. Weekly music news for the new music business by two longtime Cheap Trick fans, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. We were Jay's first concert, 8/13/77, right Jay? Portland, Oregon? I don't know. Have a nice day.
From Billboard, RIAA's year-end reports by the numbers.
From Music Business Worldwide, 11 quick and important takeaways from IFPI's Global Music Report 2025.
And from MIDiA, a model for a new music streaming industry. Well, it is episode 241, as Jay and I were kind of remarking earlier, and we're glad you're here. So we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, Jay, it is very good to see you. We have been
Good
yapping
to see you.
for a little while this morning, and
Yes.
just covered just about everything, I think.
Yeah, lots to catch up on. One of the things we were talking about is the Ledger newsletter that we talk about
Yes.
quite a bit from Glenn Peoples. We were jokingly referring to it as the word of the week, and that is datapocalypse. This datapocalypse, he says it hit the music industry this week as both the RIAA and the IFPI reports. These are 2024 year-end numbers. And that follows the MIDiA research annual report last week. And all three of those reports agreed that growth has slowed in 2024.
Right. So we're going to break down each report and give you some highlights today on the podcast. But it is important to keep in mind that the RIAA report focuses on the U.S. music business, where the IFPI report is worldwide.
Right. The IFPI figures and rankings of top markets revealed the rise of emerging markets, while the U.S.-focused RIAA figures, that revealed the growth in the United States was sort of weak, although not the worst in the world.
Right, exactly. But it is interesting, all of these things. And ever since I've known you, you love data, man.
I love
you
the data.
You are the data dude, and I do that. By the way, Jay and I will be presenting at the Ohio University Summit this coming week. We're both looking really forward to that. This event brings together top artists, industry leaders, and innovators for insightful discussions, networking, and exclusive performances. There will be keynote performance and conversations this year with Julianne Baker from Boy Genius, DJ Premier, and Charles Wesley Godwin. So we are really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Josh does such a great job with this Ohio University Summit. I did it last year. It was really great. This year, we get to do it together. Really looking forward to it. There's a couple of Behind the Setlist podcasts that are coming up that we're really excited about. We have David Gray, which is live, but we're going to be recording with Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth. Really looking forward to that. We have some really great guests coming in April and May.
You guys have been doing a great job with that podcast.
Thank you, sir.
And you must be up to, what number are you at? You guys must be doing a ton of them over the years.
I don't know. I'll have to look. I think it's probably like 50 or 60 that we've done so far. It's really a joy to do because we do sort of a deep dive when it comes to, research on these artists and really look for some topics that are near and dear to their heart and things that maybe they don't always get to talk about. And then, we base it that core is of the set list. And there's a really great site called setlist.fm. If you haven't visited, you can look up your favorite artists. And you can see some set lists of what they've been doing lately, which is really cool. But you can also go to their sort of analytics tab and see how many songs or how many times they play certain songs and what covers they do. And it's really fun. But Glenn and I have a blast with that behind the set list.
Well, and there is an art to doing a set list. How many times have you gone to a concert and go, really? Why did you do that there? And that's what I love the most about the podcast is you guys really do dig deep and you kind of hear some of the thought processes of how they and what they think about when they throw it down on that little piece of paper that's sitting on the stage.
Yeah.
Some Spotify news this week. This is from the Macau News. Spotify has certified its first 2 fully AI-generated albums. Boundary-pushing visual artist Pedro Sandoval helped develop the AI voices and provided the instructions and refinement to create the music. The move comes amid concerns that AI-generated music is likely to enrich tech companies while harming the earnings of human artists.
And so it begins. So Sandoval is a staunch defender of AI as a tool, and he argues that when it's used well, it allows for the expansion of creative possibilities without substituting the essence of the artist, he says. The value of works using AI, he told Euronews, quote, depends on the instructions and refinement that the artist applies to the process.
All right. So the market for non-human authored music is expected to increase to 16 billion euros annually by 2028. While much of this will be background or incidental music, it still represents a significant shift away from human artists.
Yeah, we'll be watching this closely. AI generated. We reported last week that, Deezer said that 10% of what is uploaded, and their uploads are 150,000 tracks on average every day to Deezer. They estimated that 10% were fully AI generated, and you and I talked to an expert in this field who thought it was double that. So this is, we're going to be watching this space because this is going to get a little nutty.
Yes, for sure.
In other Spotify news, Spotify debuted Concerts Near You, and these are playlists discovering nearby shows. There was a story by Lauren Forrestal from TechCrunch last week, and she said that last week Spotify launched a new personalized playlist designed to help listeners discover upcoming concerts in their area.
The playlist titled Concerts Near You, not surprisingly, is updated every Wednesday with 30 songs from artists performing nearby, along with full event details and ticket links. Spotify partners with ticketing platforms like AXS, Dice, Eventbrite, and Ticketmaster for that.
Right. To receive the latest show updates, listeners should ensure they're sharing their location through quote-unquote live events section, found under the search tab in the Spotify app. Spotify also recommends enabling push notifications and following your favorite artist to make sure that you receive those personalized reminders. Interesting.
Yeah. So this is interesting. This next piece, since you just got back from South by Southwest, this is an article in the Austin American-Statesman. South by Southwest transforms in 2026. Music Weekend gone. Half-price badges available now. So they say the South by Southwest Conference and Festival is undergoing a dramatic transformation with dwindling band numbers and a surge in film interest. The event will present a trimmed-down schedule that is 2 days shorter. South by Southwest is also offering a lifeline to cash-strapped would-be attendees with unprecedented early bird discounts, slashing badge prices in half for a limited time. Nice.
Yeah, the piece goes on to say that while the change eliminates what was traditionally a music-centric second weekend, festival organizers say the music festival is not getting shorter. South by Southwest 2026 will actually feature one more night of music, as showcases will take place throughout the entire event, not just on that second weekend, with 7 nights of shows instead of 6. And that was from South by Southwest VP of Communications, Lillian Park. She said that in a statement. So we got back from South by Southwest and there were a lot of stories saying, oh, they're eliminating music. And they're not really. They're getting rid of that second weekend at the tail end of the conference and spreading the music out a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is such a big event. You know, it's been a couple of years since I've been, but even the last time I went, I was just floored at how big it had become since the early days. And it's almost too much to see in that amount of time. You just can't.
Well, yeah, it's like CES or NAMM or something like that. It's gotten so big, but remember, it's film, it's television, it's books, it's, music, it's all sorts of different verticals. And I plan on going. I still enjoy going more for the panels and for the discussions and the people that you bump into in line waiting for coffee.
Always. Hey, before we get going, Jay, what do you say we thank our sponsors? We certainly appreciate that and couldn't do it without them.
That's right. We're sponsored by the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC is a nonprofit organization that's making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify, Apple Music, in the U.S. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms. It matches the money to the creators who earned it, and then it pays them or their publishers and admin partners the royalties that they're due. To date, the MLC has already distributed $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, composer, or a lyricist with music streaming, or a publisher or admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it receives. Visit themlc.com to learn more.
They do great work over there, without a doubt. And a big special thanks to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noises in a movie? Music.ai makes it easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio daily. They can process yours today. Visit Music.ai to get started. And every week, every week, for all 250 plus episodes, I've got to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the fabulous weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and a fantastic photographer.
Oh, thank you very
as
much.
Well.
Checks
when
in the
does he
mail.
sleep? That's what I need to ask. When does he sleep?
No, and I get to do this show every week. It's a highlight of my week. And, one of the best parts is, that hour that we spend just catching up before we hit record, talking about documentaries that we've seen and books that we're reading and shows that we're going to and all of that. It's just so much fun to do that every week. And I get to do that with my friend Mike Etchart. He's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And one thing I wanted to mention that obviously, we can't do this without our sponsors, and we have such great sponsors. But if you'd like to become a sponsor, reach out to us. We'll have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. We got a lot of ears listening to us, which we certainly appreciate. So let us jump into the stories, Jay. The first one, it is from Mark Schneider over at Billboard. It's RIAA's, I should say, year-end report by the numbers. So let's do some of the highlights. The U.S. recorded music industry reached an all-time high of almost $18 billion in estimated retail value. Streaming generated just a skosh under $15 billion, making up 84% of total industry revenue.
Yeah, and that's pretty consistent with the last couple of years that streaming in the U.S. has been around 84%. We're going to get into the worldwide number where it's a little bit lower in a moment. But this RIAA report, according to Mark Schneider over at Billboard, paid music subscriptions surpassed 100 million for the first time. That's incredible. In the U.S., paid music subs surpassed 100 million, and that contributed almost $12 billion, nearly 2/3 of the music industry's total revenue. You and I talk about vinyl a lot. Vinyl sales increased for the 18th straight year, reaching $1.4 billion, and that's the highest level since 1984. So that's 18 years of growth for vinyl. And for the third year in a row, vinyl records in units outsold CDs. So vinyl sold 44 million units last year, and CDs 33 million units. So it wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close. And we've said this so many times, but I still think about it. It's like we were there when nobody wanted vinyl. All they wanted was CDs. We were getting vinyl out the door and just good riddance, be gone. And CDs were coming in, and look at where we are now.
Yeah.
Recorded music revenue in the U.S. notched record high revenues of, as I said, just a little under $18 billion in 2024. That's marking a modest 3% increase from 2023, but capping a ninth straight year of upward mobility for the U.S. business. That's according to the RIAA. Like a broken record, no pun intended, this growth was once again primarily driven by streaming and the enduring popularity of vinyl. Enduring indeed.
Yeah, so the music industry's, that revenue gain of 3% in 2024 is sort of a decrease, versus 2023, but it's still growing. Streaming continued to dominate the music industry, of course, and we mentioned it was 84% of total revenues, around for the third consecutive years. Streaming revenue grew by 4% to about $15 billion, with paid subscriptions leading, the leading contributor, and that rose about 5%, which alone made up almost 80% of streaming revenues and nearly 2/3 of all recorded music revenue in the U.S. last year.
Right. And for the first time, the number of paid subscriptions surpassed 100 million, as we mentioned. That's increasing by 3% from the previous year's tally of 97 million. However, revenue from limited tier subscriptions, which includes services like Amazon Prime, Pandora Plus, fitness streaming services, and other paid subs that don't offer full on-demand catalogs, that declined by 2% to $1 billion. That's an improvement over 2023, though, when that drop was 4%.
Yeah. So it's almost flat. Reversing last year's gains, ad-supported streaming experienced a slight decline. That's ad-supported streaming. The revenue from ad-supported on-demand music services like YouTube and Spotify's free tier, it actually dropped 2%. Last year, it was a 2% gain. This year, it was a 2% drop. Digital and customized radio stations, including Sirius XM, that grew, 3%. Sound exchange distributions, which handle payments for artists and copyright holders, that rose by 5% to over $1 billion. And while other ad-supported streaming revenue fell by 4%.
Well, most physical music formats saw a continued resurgence, as we said, with total revenues increasing by 5% to $2 billion. Vinyl was the standout performer yet again, growing by 7% to almost $1.5 billion, and that's marking its 18th consecutive year of growth. Yes, 18th consecutive year. Vinyl albums outsold CDs with 44 million units sold compared to 33 million CDs. A year prior, those numbers were a little over 43 million and 37 million, meaning the gap between the physical cousins, as they say, is growing. Despite these trends, CD revenue still grew by 1% to, over $500 million. That's $541 million, compared to a little less than that last year, $537.
Yeah, so it's almost flat, but at least CDs aren't declining, like you might think. It actually grew by 1%. I think a lot of people are going back into record stores today. So, we don't talk about digital downloads much, but, they continued their downward spiral, and they decreased 18% last year. And now they only represent 2% of the music industry. But think about that. In 2012, at its peak, downloads were 43% of the market, and now they're 2%. So the overall percentage breakdown between digital and physical revenue, 88% is on the digital side, 12% on the physical side. And that's remained pretty consistent for the last 5-6 years.
Right. Now, I will tell you, though, Jay, that I bought 3 digital download albums just yesterday. I still do digital downloads. I must be the only one in my neighborhood that's doing that, but I am, because I like to have things on my playlist, and I do a fair amount of PA rentals and stuff for events, and I don't want to stream stuff. I want to make sure I've got those tracks in an iPad or an iPod or whatever there. It's because sometimes you have sketchy internet service, and it's just not worth the hassle. So I still buy digital downloads.
I get
Me
it.
and like 2 other people, but that's it's still out there.
Yep.
Our next story, Jay, it's from our good friend Tim Ingham over at Music Business Worldwide. 11 quick and important takeaways from the IFPI's Global Music Report 2025. So that Global Music Report reveals a music industry continuing to grow while facing new challenges and opportunities. To be clear, the IFPI's numbers refer strictly to wholesale recorded music revenues. That's the money paid through to labels, distributors, and artists. And again, this is a worldwide number, so the U.S. and worldwide combined. So here are 11 quick takeaways from the report.
Yeah, such a great article by Tim Ingham. Number 1, continued growth for a 10th year. This is global, remember. We just covered RIAA, which is U.S. only. This is global. Global recorded music revenues grew almost 5% year over year in 2024, reaching nearly $30 billion U.S. dollars. This marks the 10th consecutive year of growth, though the pace has slowed compared to previous years.
Well, and number 2 is this is a strong year for some emerging markets. 3 of the world's 7 regions posted year-over-year double-digit gains. That's the Middle East and North Africa. They led at almost 23% year-over-year, followed by Sub-Saharan Africa. That's up almost 23%, and Latin America up almost 23% as well. And it's so fascinating, Jay. When we were working at labels, did anybody, when you talked about international, it was usually the UK or Germany or Japan, but here we are talking about Middle East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And these are strong numbers, 23% year over year. The third takeaway, Tim points out, is that Europe's strong performance. Europe grew by over 8% year over year, and that represents almost a third of global revenues in 2024, maintaining its position as the second largest region. That's Europe.
Right. So the article goes on to say that it's a disappointing year for the USA. The United States, the world's single largest recorded music market, posted wholesale growth of just a little over 2% year over year in 2024. That's according to the IFPI's figures, even lower than the RIAA's estimate of wholesale growth in the U.S., which they said was just a little under 3%. That was published yesterday, or last week, I should say, on the 18th of March.
Right. And combined, the USA and Canada represented over 40% of global revenues in 2024 after jointly growing just a little over 2% year over year. So North America, the market, that share of global revenues is significantly down from previous years when North America typically commanded a share closer to 45%. The USA's growth figure in 2024 that you just mentioned, a little over 2% year over year, that was significantly below the global average, which is 4.8% up and far behind the growth rates seen in many other regions and markets. So it's really slowed down. The growth has in the USA and Canada.
Yeah, it certainly has. Europe, including the UK, added more revenue growth than any other region. The region's 3 largest markets, that's the UK, Germany, and France, all generated year-over-year revenue growth. And they also talk about streaming dominance continuing. The global recorded music streaming revenue exceeded $20 billion. That's a lot of money for the first time in 2024, representing just a little under 70% of total recorded music revenue.
Right. And number 6 takeaway, ad-supported streaming slowed down. This was a little surprising. While subscription streaming revenue increased by almost 10% year over year in 2024 globally, ad-supported streaming formats grew by a troubling low 1.2%. This represents a significant gap between the 2 streaming revenue sources, with paid subscription services driving the majority of streaming growth. And that's a positive thing because there's more revenue from the non-ad supported or premium tier.
Point number 7 from the article, physical formats endure mixed results. Physical music trade revenues declined by 3.1% year over year in 2024. However, this followed a strong performance in 2023 when revenues soared by a little less than 15% year over year. In contrast, global vinyl revenues continued to grow, up almost 5% year over year, marking the format's 18th consecutive year of growth. Physical formats represented a little over 16% of total global revenues. Again, amazing. We're talking about numbers in physical just continuing to jam up. It's amazing.
18 years of growth in the U.S., 18 consecutive years of growth worldwide for vinyl. That's incredible. The number 8 takeaway is subscription user growth. The total number of users of paid music streaming subscription accounts, it grew almost 11% year over year to 752 million subscribers globally. That's incredible. This strong growth in the subscriber base continues to drive the paid streaming segment, of course, which remains the industry's prime revenue source.
Point number 9, market ranking changes. There was a movement in the top 10 markets in 2024 as Mexico overtook Australia and moved up a place to feature at number 10. Brazil's revenues grew by an impressive north of 20% year over year, making it the fastest growing top 10 market, while Mexico increased revenues by almost 16% year over year.
Incredible. Way to go, Mexico. 55 out of the 58 markets recorded growth in 2024. Let me repeat that. 55 out of the 58 markets recorded growth in 2024, which that included 8 of the top 10 global markets. They recorded growth. The number 10 takeaway, Asian markets post mixed results. Asia recorded moderate growth of just over 1% year over year in 2024, set against a strong performance in 2023 where the region grew by almost 15%.
Right, but Asia maintained its status as the world's largest physical market and accounted for over 45% of global physical revenues in 2024. A decline in physical sales, a little less than 5%, therefore impacted the region's overall growth rate. Japan, the second largest market, was flat year on year, whilst China, ranked number 5 globally, increased revenues by almost 10% year over year.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that the Asia market declined in physical sales, almost 5%. And that was sort of because Japan, which is the number 1 market for physical music, that was flat year on year. Super interesting. The last takeaway from this report, industry leaders seek further revenue opportunities in the years ahead. And it starts off, with Sir Lucian Grange, who's the chairman CEO of Universal Music Group. He emphasized that, quote, it's more critical than ever that we continue to advance the artist-centric principles that elevate the entire music ecosystem by rewarding real artists and those who support them.
Right. And then Rob Stringer, of course, he's the chairman over at Sony Music Group. He added that while we are supportive of technological change that helps bring music to fans everywhere around the world, it only seems reasonable that artists be paid appropriately for their endeavors.
Yeah. And then finally, Robert Kinsel, CEO over at Warner Music Group, he noted, quote, the future is never guaranteed. We must continue to build a collaborative environment where artists are championed, music is valued and protected, and innovation thrives, end quote. And well said, Robert Kinsel.
Indeed. Well, it's, again, very interesting to look at these numbers worldwide and see what kind of gauge the temperature of everything. Before we get into our last story, Jay, what do you say we thank our other sponsors? We, again, are so wonderfully blessed to have them. And if you would like to become a sponsor with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you.
Yes, sir. We are sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It's edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bandsintown. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bandsintown to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform, connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. And I am going to a concert tonight to see Todd Rundgren, and I found out about the concert because I have the Bandsintown app. And that's not the first time that it has let me know that there was a concert happening that I wanted to see and didn't even know about.
Absolutely.
So, gotta love that for sure. All right. What do you say we jump into our last story? And this one really caught my attention. It's from Mark Mulligan over at MIDiA, a model for a new music streaming industry. The music industry is approaching a pivot point. On the one hand, things look positive. We have UMG's Streaming 2.0, artist-centric licensing, the impending launch of Supremium and expanded rights revenues hitting $4 billion. On the other, we have streaming growth slowing to 6.2 growth in 2024, artist direct revenue growing 3.5 times more slowly than the number of artists, and independent labels beginning to voice concern over the lost royalties that may result from artist-centric.
Right. Mark writes that the very real challenge facing the music industry is both of these views of the world are true. In short, if you're big, you can see a path to getting bigger, and if you're small, you can see a path to getting smaller. This is bifurcation. It's a bifurcation theory, a concept MIDiA introduced in 2024. So this year is going to be the year that bifurcation rubber hits the road. In doing so, it creates a major, pun intended, a major opportunity for all non-majors.
Right. So here's a few highlights from the article. The long tail is being demonetized. Artist-centric might result in many independent artists and labels seeing their royalties increase. But what is inarguable is that many artists and labels will earn less.
Yeah, Mark goes on to say that the groundswell of discontent is coming. And what he means by that is when you add all of this long-term challenge of feeding the insatiable appetite of the algorithms with endless releases and social posts, and growing body of artists and labels are going to be asking why they should even bother.
Right. So he says, so much for the problems. What about solutions? He says, now is the time to build a place for the long tail, a place where the smaller players do not have to compete on unequal terms with the bigger ones. He says, here is a model for an independent alternative to streaming.
Right. And the first one of these alternatives, curation, a highly curated place for smaller labels and artists with human curation at the fore.
Indeed. Second one is play credits. He says a credits-based system where people can subscribe for a certain number of credits and top up if they want, with each credit equaling one play. This is thereby guaranteeing a fixed per-stream rate rather than a wish and a prayer that the royalty pot does not get divided too many ways this month.
And part of this model, he points out discretionary pricing. That's where labels and artists, they can determine on a track-by-track basis how many credits each track requires. Despite us having been educated so by streaming, not all music is worth the same. Labels and artists might decide that they want some of their songs to be 0 credits to drive streams. Some might be 1 and others might be 10 to drive remuneration. It is a model that works well in other areas like stock photography libraries, for example.
Mm-hmm. So Mark talks about curated freemium. Instead of simply a free tier in addition to 0 credit streams, the free ad and brand supported front door would be an Apple Music Radio-like set of live streaming radio stations, all with clickable now playing track details, and some stations with regular shows you recognize and human DJs.
Yeah, the next point he points out is not just music, but about the music too, meaning artist interviews, album reviews, etc. Taking the best of what Bandcamp and Apple Music do. The next one is alternative remuneration, artist subscriptions, tipping, social commerce, Shopify-like artist stores, virtual items. Not each and every one of these will fit every artist and label, so these would be opt-in extras.
Right. So Mark goes on to say, this may sound like pie in the sky thinking, but much of this has already been done. Some of it in the music business, like Apple Music Radio for curation and interviews, like Bandcamp for reviews. And he said, and some outside of it, like Audible and Getty Images for credits. MIDiA is also laid out a lot of further detail for a similar model in our bifurcation report last year. It just needs all pulling together into a compelling whole. You can read the entire piece in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter, or jump over to MIDiaResearch.com if you're more interested. Very interesting things. And again, these are things that, it's streaming is now, it's just kind of de rigueur. It's been here for a while now, and as often you start kind of looking at it, well, how can we do better? What can we improve? How can we make it better?
Yeah, it's been 15 years, and I love that he's pointing out, we need to evolve here. And I think we're going to see that. We're seeing the majors talk about, these super fan tiers. And I just love that we're starting to look at this a little bit differently. And I'm really excited to see how it evolves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is time to wrap up the show. If you enjoy the show, please tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate it. And of course, big thanks to the MLC, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate their participation. So, on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I am Mike Etchart, and we both say thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.